Hello and welcome to the final episode of the season for the Gaming Society Radio Hour. I'm your co-host James.
And I'm Matthew.
All right, and for our feature today, Matt and I are going to be recounting our top 5 games. These are all personal preferences, and because of that, we want to save some time for our feature. So we're gonna do the news here, pretty short and sweet. So our first piece of news is that Nintendo officially unveiled or officially announced their new console, and it was on Twitter at 3 a.m. the other day, and they announced that the next generation of Nintendo is coming March 2017, #NX, and NX we've known for a while, whether it was through, I guess this is really the first official avenue that we're hearing about the NX, but we've heard about the NX for a while through rumors and leaks and what have you, that this is going to be Nintendo's next console. There's rumors of it being a handheld console hybrid. There's rumors that it's supposed to be able to run in a higher definition than the PS4 and Xbox One. But those are all just rumors, and we don't really know anything yet other than the fact that whatever the NX is coming out March 2017. So what do you think about the fact that they announced this on Twitter, Matt?
I think Twitter itself is one of the best media sources right now for game developers, which is strange, because if you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have told you it was a terrible idea and that it would never get anywhere. But with so many people, especially Nintendo's audience, or rather the people that the Nintendo wants to buy their consoles, being on Twitter and being engaged in social media, the idea of releasing it in any other form besides Twitter, something like a newspaper or something like that, really just would not work for the people that they're attempting to pander towards. And releasing at 3 a.m. is probably has to do with some other time.
Yeah, that was more of a time zone thing. I was just adding my perspective. When it popped up on my Twitter feed, it woke me up. So that's why I added that. But it's pretty unorthodox for a major console developer to, first of all, the first time that we're hearing about the NX officially is on Twitter. That in itself is unorthodox because developers of consoles usually wait until E3 or at least some other large expo or convention. It's also pretty unorthodox that they didn't tell us anything about it or even what it's called, because the NX we know is the working project title in-house at Nintendo. That's not actually what the console is called. So really all we know about this is that there is a console that's coming out in March of 2017. So I mean, it just seems really, really odd that they would announce this with really no information about it.
I think that's absolutely true. At least in the past, companies like Microsoft and Sony have always released their new information about consoles at those huge expos, at those giant places where people can see them, and people will get information based off of that. So Nintendo doing something like this, at least in my perspective, is largely due to the number of leaks that have come out about this new console from people inside Nintendo, for something like that. And I think they're attempting to get rid of some of the rumors that have come out there about various parts of the device, because a lot of people have been saying, oh, it's definitely called the NX, even though maybe it is just the project title, and I guess they were trying to avoid that and maybe making a little remark to that with the hashtag NX at the bottom. Again, it's very strange. You would assume that they would put out a little more information about it, but I think this is them attempting to signal, hey, we're not really sure exactly what we're going to put out there, but it's going to be coming out on this date, so stay tuned.
It has me a little worried though, because it's a little less than a year away from coming out, and we usually know more about a major console more than a year from its launch. So I'm worried that this is really all that they can tell us yet, because they haven't really ironed out all the details. And I'm also worried about Nintendo, because the Wii U is kind of in this purgatory. It's entered a little bit of a lame duck session now that the NX has been officially announced, or at least dated, because the first-party support for the Wii U is basically non-existent between now and when the NX is going to launch, because the new Legend of Zelda game was going to come out on the Wii U, but it has since been delayed until March so that it can launch on the Wii U and the NX.
Yes, I would say that is a strange choice on their part, which likely means that they were not able to get out the ability for developers to work on titles for it early enough, which means that they probably somehow got behind on their development, which is, again, what this would likely indicate. But another thing that we do have to remember is that Nintendo is notoriously quiet about all things that they are releasing. And this is not the first time that they have attempted to keep some type of information on wraps. And as a matter of fact, all of the leaks from Nintendo about the console previously are almost unheard of for a company like Nintendo to actually have happen. Other companies like Microsoft and Sony, leaks happen all the time, but Nintendo usually is pretty good at keeping those things on wraps. So the fact that they released all that information accidentally, and then now they're attempting to sort of say, hey, whoa, guys, stop. Look, the console will be coming out later. That's all we're willing to tell you right now. Just take a breath. I think that that's an interesting plan that likely will not work for what they're trying to do.
Right. I mean, I wish Nintendo well, but I mean, I am just kind of concerned because things don't necessarily, or haven't necessarily seemed to be going their way in the last couple of years.
I think it'll be interesting for them to release a new console. I think the PlayStation 4.5 likely will come out, somewhere around that time as well. So I'm going to be intrigued at this, 8th generation of consoles that shouldn't really have come out?
I don't know. It's so the lines have blurred in terms of what is a new generation of consoles. So, Matt, keeping with our Nintendo tangent, for our final piece of news, you want to talk a little bit about a game that you talked about previously on this show.
Yeah, Pokemon Go. Remember that game? It's the augmented reality game where you get to catch Pokemon in real life and play around with them with your friends and all those good sorts of things. So we got some more information pretty recently about that, and that came from the game beta testing in, I think, Australia and New Zealand recently, and we received some new footage that was illegally leaked through an NDA, sort of breaching an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement with Pokemon Go, but that's fine, because now we get to know more information about this game that we all are so excited about. And what we got is a mix between disappointment and confusion, is what I would say. So it's about 9 minutes of footage that gives you stuff like, oh, look, there's character customization and all sorts of other things. But what the footage only shows is the ability to catch Pokemon. You cannot battle Pokemon in the wild. Essentially, you see Pokemon out there and then you just capture them. So it's more or less just a collection thing where you wander around and collect things, sort of like geocaching, which would actually be in line with what Niantic has done in the past. In addition, it feels like you're not actually able to battle other people unless you go to these specific places, which are going to be these Pokemon gyms, which you pick one between 3 colors and then you sort of join that type of group. Kind of every single person in the world will be part of one of those 3 different factions, and then you will wage war against trying to hold on to different gyms that are in various locations around the world, which again is very much in line with what Niantic has done in the past, but is not quite what a lot of people were looking forward to in Pokemon Go. And so this has caused a lot of backlash among many people who were originally quite excited about the game and now are sort of slowly working backwards, because one of the other features that it showed was that, hey, there are going to be Pokemon eggs, and you know how you hatch a Pokemon? Well, so the way that you do it in a game is you walk around. You walk a certain distance in the game and then the Pokemon hatches. How do you do that in real life, you might ask? Well, you actually have to walk. The game has a pedometer and measures how far you have walked, and that is going to be how you hatch the Pokemon. So it ends up being more of a glorified geocaching, sort of a walking simulator or fitness simulator. So far, less than excited about the latest things that have been coming out from Pokemon Go. To be fair, though, it is beta, and many things might change, and also it was 9 minutes of footage, so what do we really know?
Yeah. All right. It's interesting that you bring up the pedometer, because this will not be the first Pokemon game that comes with a pedometer. Did you ever play Hearth Gold or Soul Silver?
No, I didn't.
Heart Gold or Soul Silver? Yeah, that came with a little unit that you could send your Pokemon out to, and I believe it was a pedometer, and it registered how much time they spent in there. And how many steps you were taking, but I think that was a way that you could build friendship with them. I don't know, just a fun fact.
That's a weird choice. I'd much prefer the more recent games where you actually have to play with them.
This doesn't surprise me necessarily, because I don't know what they would have necessarily been able to accomplish on a cellular device, because in my head, it was never going to be like a mobile version of Pokemon Coliseum or Pokemon Stadium, because that, I feel like, would just have been too tall an order for the hardware that you can fit in your phone.
I'm a little confused what you mean. The game that a lot of people were hoping for in Pokemon Go was one where essentially randomly Pokemon will jump out when you're using the app, right? And then you'll battle them with a Pokemon that you've collected over time or whatever like that. And then you'll be able to see other people who are also trainers, and then you can battle your group of Pokemon against them. And that's all we were looking for.
That's fair. But what I was expecting, and the reason that I'm not necessarily let down, because this is like kind of what I was expecting, was that it would be more similar to the mini games that are in each generation of Pokemon that some people really like and some people use, but not a lot of people do. I thought it would be similar to that, because I didn't think that they'd be able to manage a full Pokemon trainer experience on your cellular device. I feel like that would just, I don't know. I didn't ever see that really happening.
By full Pokemon experience, do you just mean like one of the games? So like playing Pokemon Leaf Green on your phone?
I mean like one of the games, but in the sense that it's a bit, you are the trainer, and that you can walk around and that you can catch Pokemon. Like, yes, would I play that game? Absolutely. But I mean, I never really, because that's a big deal. And that would be a big undertaking. And while I don't think it was impossible, I just never got the vibe that that's what they were trying to do.
Really? Yeah. I mean, that's probably true. Everything that we've seen largely counteracts that. But I can still hope, right?
No, that's fair. And again, this is only 9 minutes of beta footage.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep telling myself that.
All right. So Matt and I, are going to take a little bit of a break now that we've wrapped up the news. And while we leave you, we're going to be playing, and this is Matt's idea, and I think it's quite fitting, the end theme from Portal, which is, I suppose, pretty witty since this is our last show of the season. All right. So this is Still Alive from the Portal credits. You've been listening to Gaming Society Radio Hour on WMCN 91.7 FM. And we're back to the Gaming Society Radio Hour. I'm your co-host, James.
And I'm Matthew.
Okay, so now what we're going to do to commemorate the last show of the season here is Matt and I are going to take turns recounting our top 5 games. It's going to go in an order of 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. And to keep this interesting, both for the viewers at home and for Matt and I here at the radio station, neither Matt nor I have gone over our lists with each other. So we're going to be having some raw, uncut discussion about this. And we also don't know who's going first. So Matt here has a coin. So what do you call? 'Cause you're flipping the coin.
I'm flipping the coin, so actually you should be the one who calls it.
Okay.
So what do you call?
So I'm going to call heads, and I guess if I win, then I get to choose who goes first. And if you win, then you get to choose who goes
Sure.
first.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I call heads.
All right, here we go. And it is heads.
Okay. Matt, why don't you go first?
All right. So, rounding up the top 5 with number 5 for Matthew, I have Skyrim. It's a game that we all know and love very much. It's a Bethesda title. It's a game where, I don't know, you go around a gigantic world doing all sorts of quests, using magic, using swords, using all sorts of weaponry, talking to all sorts of people that are all voiced by roughly 4 voice actors and having a grand old time.
Okay.
I think you've played Skyrim. Is that correct?
Yes. I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of Skyrim, as it were.
So would you say you enjoy the game?
I would say that it is my 5th favorite game.
Yes. So what else would you like to say about it?
Okay. So this is really interesting because both Matt and I have the same 5th favorite game.
Actually, first off, how many hours exactly would you say you have?
Okay.
Do you have the number?
Okay, so on my Steam, I think it says that I have played roughly about 24 hours worth, but I have only recently been getting into PC gaming. And before that, my first experience with Skyrim was on the PlayStation 3, which, in terms of bugs, is the objectively worst way to experience Skyrim. But I mean, I wouldn't have had it any other way because I did log several hundred hours on Skyrim on the PS3.
You seem to be avoiding the number. My number personally was 200 hours on the Xbox 360. That's just my own personal one. What was your favorite bug that you got in Skyrim? A lot of people have favorite bugs that they received in these games. Bethesda games are very well known for being extremely buggy, but usually in a good way and not a game-breaking way, so it's kind of fun and enjoyable.
Okay, so my favorite bug in Skyrim, for those of you that don't know, a major point in Skyrim is that there are dragons in the world, and you are basically the only person who can kill them. They're not by and large they are not good dragons, so they need to be killed because they are killing the innocents of Skyrim, and you're really one of the only people who can do that. And when you land the final blow on the dragon and it dies, it sort of bursts into flame, and what's left is a skeleton. And I had a bug where a dragon came at me. These are radiant dragons, so they're kind of like bosses.
They're random. They just pop up all the time.
But they're random, which I think was a stroke of genius on Bethesda's part. But anyway, when it landed, it burst into flame as though I had killed it, and it didn't actually die, though, and it became an immortal bone dragon that I couldn't kill. So I eventually just sort of ran inside a cave and waited a couple hours, and I think it just sort of, like...
Despawned,
yeah. But yeah, I for a while I was fighting an immortal bone dragon.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Mine is significantly less interesting. Some NPC, non-playable character, some random character I did some quest for him at one point, and he tried to escape town for some random reason. He was on his horse out of town, and I walked up to him. I saw that he was trying to leave town. He was just sitting there on a horse, and I looked up and I saw, he was sitting on the horse, and I looked down at the ground, and he was also in the ground. There were 2 of him. One of them, I could only see the upper half of his body in the ground, and the other one was sitting on a horse. And I talked to them each, so they had the same dialogue.
Let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about why Skyrim is one of our favorite games. So for me personally, I'm a big fan of basically all of Bethesda's open world sandbox games that are the Elder Scrolls series, which are fantasy, and the Fallout series, which are post-apocalyptic. But I think Skyrim is definitely my favorite. And there are a couple reasons for that, but the biggest reason is I just really, really like the setting. And you'll hear more about why I like the setting with one of my entries in top favorite games down the line here. But I really like the Nordic, cold, frozen, harsh tundra and mountainscape that Skyrim takes place in, because to me, that is the pinnacle of beauty of the natural world, and the exploration that I am inspired to take part in Skyrim is it's just it's so strong, and it's so beautiful and so well done. So I just really, really like that world, and being interested in exploring a world is one of the things that makes or breaks a sandbox game. So that's my biggest reason for why I really, really like Skyrim.
For me, one of the things that I enjoy the most about playing video games is that feeling of exploration that you get when you're exploring this incredible world. I'll get talking about that a little later as well. But for now, just the huge world that you get to explore in Skyrim, and the wonders that you can see, and the small things you can find by just wandering down all sorts of different nooks and crannies, is just absolutely breathtaking. And the amount of choice that you have, the amount of different abilities that you have, is absolutely amazing. I would honestly, if I could, I would probably list Skyrim and then put honorable mention to Fallout 3 as well as Oblivion personally, just because they're also incredible. And I just listed Skyrim because it was the last one that I played and I loved it to death.
I guess if we're doing an honorable mention to another Bethesda game, I would also do Fallout 3. That one is probably my favorite Fallout game. I really like the story, and the first time that you ever pop your head out of the vault. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's this whole wide world to explore. And it's a very similar thing in Skyrim, the first time that you come out of your tutorial cave. That's what it is if you escape with the Nords, the rebels. I've never actually done the tutorial with the Imperials.
I have not either.
So moving on. Let's move past this. Matt,
all right.
Matt, what's your fourth favorite game?
All right, number 4 on my list is Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 is a game where you are how do I put it? You are a party animal that, by that I mean a human being who likes to party a lot, who is in a party and eventually ends up being captured and then placed on an island. It's complicated. The story is phenomenal, though. That's all I will say, is it goes through many different drug-induced psychedelic sequences. There's one scene where you are flamethrowing a whole bunch of weed. There's all sorts of crazy things that happen. And Far Cry 3 mixed both an incredible story, phenomenal voice acting, especially the main villain of the first half of the game, who has some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in a game. He just does this phenomenal job. If you want to look up one part of it, just look up the definition of insanity, Far Cry 3. So it had the exploration, it had voice acting, it had a phenomenal story, but the gameplay was also really, really good. They had these sort of small outposts that you could take over, and you could just choose however you wanted to take them down. And so you could have different weapons. You could use a bow if you wanted to. You could sneak around if you wanted to try that. And you had all sorts of options for gameplay. So Far Cry 3 was absolutely just a blast to play. It's
a Ubisoft open world sandbox as Far Cry and Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed. But it really brought a very, very good and interesting story to the table, which is something that Ubisoft doesn't always do with their games. So it was kind of nice. It was a bit of a nice outing, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree. It still had the radio towers, though.
Oh well, yeah. I mean that's fair. Do you have any favorite story in terms of gameplay?
You mean favorite story in terms of gameplay?
Something that happened organically that. You think was pretty awesome.
I mean, what I would say is the very first time that a shark attacked me, there was just in Skyrim there are radiant dragons. In Far Cry 3 there are radiant or random sharks. You'll be just swimming in a body of water. And the very first time it was ever, or I think it's alligator, I don't know, some animal, you are just swimming in water at some point, or you're just standing in water, you're trying to get across some sort of a small stream or something, and just a shark will attack you, and it's terrifying. It's just this instant feeling of, oh my god, it's gonna kill me. And then it turns out it's just a couple of button presses. But that first initial moment was just so powerful for me.
It's a very good game. So my personal top 4, just barely beating out Skyrim, is the Banner Saga, which is an absolutely beautiful indie RPG. I talked a little bit about it last week, I believe, and it takes place in a very similarly inspired setting as Skyrim, just in terms of there's large mountains, and it's heavily inspired by Norse mythology. This game, it's a very heavily story-driven game, and it's also very character-based, and the story is incredibly nuanced in that the call to action for the game is you are running away, essentially running south, as it were, is really your only objective, because out of the north are coming these endless armies of what are called dredge, which are these massive stony golems that you have to get away, because they're killing all man and Varl, which are a race of horned giants, in their path. So it's a very similar call to action to, like, if any of you have seen the science fiction show Battlestar Galactica, something like that. And the decisions that you have to make along the way are always very, very tough decisions, because there's sort of the question of how justifiably of a terrible person am I allowed to be when I'm making these decisions, because you have to decide who it is that you're looking out for. Are you looking out for yourself? Are you looking out for your caravan? Are you looking out for the people that you meet along the way? And the way that the gameplay works is it's a tactical RPG, similar to Final Fantasy Tactics or XCOM. And when you're not in battle, then it's similar to the Oregon Trail, in that your caravan is just sort of moving south, trying to get away from the dredge. But the biggest hook for this game is I can pretty safely say that it is the most beautiful game that I have played, in that the backdrops and the battle boards and even the animation, which is rotoscoped, it's all hand-painted. And it's absolutely beautiful. The style is very reminiscent of, I forget the name of the animator, but the person behind Disney's Sleeping Beauty. It's heavily inspired by that artist's work, and it's just this beautiful, nuanced, intricate saga, because it is a trilogy of games, and the second game just came out, which I'm about halfway through. You can import your save data similar to a BioWare game, and it's an amazing experience, and that is my number 4 game.
Did you have any gameplay experiences that you'd like to share in Banner Saga? Or Banner Saga 2?
No, that's fair. I guess it's hard to bring anything up without spoiling anything, but I think that there are some battles in the tactical-based format. There are some battles that are just very important to the plot, and sometimes I could kind of create my own narrative in terms of selectively picking, okay, in the story that I'm creating within the story that's laid out for me, who do I think would be in this battle, and who's landing the killing blows and stuff. And that's probably just something that not a lot of people do. I do it because I'm a big fan of role playing in my role playing games, if that makes sense. So yeah, those are some of my favorite moments from the Banner Saga.
Sure, sounds good. All right, rounding up my list with number 3, we have The Binding of Isaac. This is a game that I pitched a while back, and it happens to be one of my favorite games of all time, and it was a very tough decision whether or not to put this at 2 or 3, but I ended up putting it at 3. Now, Binding of Isaac is a top-down roguelike shooter. Sort of. It's a very strange game. The principle of the game is you move through procedurally generated rooms, gathering items and other such things, and defeating the enemies around you before sort of reaching the boss and then moving down to the next floor until eventually you beat the final boss and you beat the game. One of the things about Binding of Isaac that I loved so much is that every run, even if you encounter the exact same rooms, will still be different because of the items that you get. The system that it chooses to use is that every single item interacts with every single other item in the game very differently. For example, there will be an item which allows you to shoot this massive red beam across the entire screen, and that's fantastic. But then there'll be other items which then cause it to warp out. Maybe you can get a homing ability, which will then cause this gigantic red beam of death to then home in on the enemies, which is pretty great. There's another ability which allows you to just click on the screen and a bomb will appear, and then you can get upgrades for that bomb with other types of items, and it's fantastic. So the different things that can happen every single run are just so incredible, and the options are basically limitless. So Binding of Isaac, one of my favorite games. I remember seeing somebody play it at like a camp or something at one point, and I immediately just fell in love with it, and I could not stop playing it. So
yeah, the power-ups are incredibly varied. They're all useful, and they stack, don't they? And if you get a certain power-up, it'll affect how other power-ups that you've already gotten work, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain, yes.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, it's got an amazing amount of replayability. Just if you're a person who's easily scared, just don't watch any of the trailers. just in general, like whether or not you're an easily scared person, my recommendation is if you think this game is interesting, then buy it. Just don't watch any of the trailers because they don't have very much gameplay and they're mostly just nightmare fuel.
Yeah, the story behind the game is very, very dark and rooted in Christian mythology. Ed McMillan, the creator of the game, who also created Binding of Isaac Rebirth, as well as Super Meat Boy, has a very dark sense of humor and a very dark art style. So it is a little bit disturbing, but the game itself is just so much fun to play, but it is very, very difficult.
All right, so my number 3 game, smack dab in the middle here, is a game that Matt pitched earlier this season that I then played for that reason. Also, I had to play it for a class, but I ended up really, really enjoying it, and it was Life is Strange. And Life is Strange. Oh man, I cannot begin to describe the emotions and just the feels that game put me through. And I guess let me put it this way: when I finished the game, it was probably 3 a.m. because it was over spring break, and I had a week to play 5 different games for a class. So I was playing video games for long periods of time. So it was about 3 a.m. when I finished that game. And for the first 5 minutes, I was just in awe and couldn't react to anything. And then the next 10 minutes after that, I was just bawling my eyes out. And I'm not someone who's easily moved by movies or video games. And I haven't touched the game since, because it made me feel such powerful emotions that I don't know if I'm ready to go back to the world in which Life is Strange takes place. It's an incredibly powerful game. So enough about what the game makes me feel and about what the game actually is. It's a questionably indie, if you listen to our last episode, it's a questionably indie episodic story game about a girl who she is a senior in high school, and she discovers that she has the ability to rewind time. And what she does is The game takes place roughly over a week, and she essentially just tries to be as good a person as she can and use her powers for the best, for everyone's benefit, just in terms of, oh no. Well, I mean, it can be as trivial as this person gets hit in the head by a football. I'm going to rewind and warn them not to sit there so they don't get their head hit by a football. And this isn't really a spoiler because it's the first 10 minutes of the game, and it's how she discovers that she has her power. Is a girl gets shot in the girls' bathroom in her high school, and that's how she discovers that she has this power. She rewinds and makes it so that I believe she pulls the fire alarm so that this girl doesn't get shot. And I mean, I can't really say anything else because it's just one of those games. It's a beautiful game. It makes you feel so many things that you really just have to play yourself. It's amazing.
I completely agree on all of that. Having played Life is Strange, the game is phenomenal. It's just a thrilling experience all the way through that does indeed leave you feeling all sorts of feelings for all of the different characters, and it's just, I don't know, it's absolutely amazing. Some of the moments in the game are just so fantastic.
Yeah, and I wish I could share them with you all, but we try not to spoil things on this show. So really, I mean, if this game if any of these games on this list interest you at all, we highly recommend you play them. But I mean, that goes for Life is Strange as well.
Yeah, maybe we should be listing where you can buy them and their prices as well. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, they're all on Steam. I'm pretty sure they're all on Steam.
That's actually going to end up being a little bit false later on.
Actually, you know what? That's going to end up being false for one of mine as well. So that's.
So the previous games we've listed are all available on Steam. Skyrim's like, I don't know, $20, something like that.
If you want the Legendary Edition, yeah.
I want to say, what was the other one? Binding of Isaac is like usually it's on sale for like $2. That's pretty good.
Banner Saga is $20 usually, but it will routinely go on sale for $5. Yeah.
Anyway, so if you want to purchase the games, you can follow the link. Anyway, so my number 2 favorite game is going to be FIFA 07. Now, this is why I said that not all of my games are on Steam. And actually, another one is actually not also on Steam. But FIFA 07, I can't decide if it's the gameplay of the game or it's simply the nostalgia behind it that makes me love it so much. But having gone back and played the game relatively recently, it still holds up, surprisingly. For those of you who don't know, the FIFA series is a soccer simulator, more or less. It's just a soccer sports game. That's all it is. But FIFA 07 holds a special place in my heart because it is one of the first games that actually made me want to play video games. It was the first console game that I ever got and that I ever played at a friend's house that I was able to play for more than 5 hours straight and still love the heck out of the thing. I have many fond memories of playing the game with friends, many fond memories of creating characters in the game. The control scheme and the control style of the game was just so excellent and easy to use and just felt right and felt good. And it was fully featured, and the soundtrack are still songs that I have on my iPod today. So FIFA 07, I don't know if I would advise getting it, and I'm not sure if I'd advise getting the later games in the series, but FIFA 07, if you can ever pick it up, it was a quality game.
All right, so my number 2 game, and this is definitely not on Steam because I'm pretty sure it's the oldest one that we've listed thus far, and it's also a PlayStation exclusive, is Shadow of Colossus. And Shadow of Colossus originally came out on the PS2. I wasn't playing video games back then, but they re-released it in a bundle with the game Ico on the PlayStation 3, and I played it then. And it was one of the earliest games back when the debate of whether or not video games were art. You don't really hear about that argument as much anymore, but that used to be a big deal, and Shadow of Colossus is one of those games that got brought up very frequently in that argument. And it's a very, very simple game. There's very little dialogue and very few characters. The general story is that you're playing as a man named Wander who brings. You don't know if it's his wife or his girlfriend, but a woman that he loved, was killed, sacrificed, and he wants to resurrect her. So he brings her to these forbidden lands because he heard a rumor that some deity or powerful being existed in these lands that could bring back life. And this being exists, but in order to bring her back from the dead, you need to kill, I think it's 16 different colossi, which are these massive, massive behemoths that seem to be made of rock and stone. So the entire game is basically riding your horse to where the colossi are and then killing them in just a massive, over-the-top, amazing boss battle. And from that simple premise, some really, really complex emotions and themes kind of come up, like, because you are committing genocide against these colossi. To how far are you willing to go for someone you love? Is this really what you want? So it's an absolutely amazing game, and it holds up so well, and it's a blast to play. You get just such a huge adrenaline rush from playing it because you're, trying to kill these 300-foot tall, just massive beings with you and your sword.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Shadow of the Colossus, and I can't wait to play it someday. You talking about that game reminded me of something I completely omitted from my list, which makes me feel a little sad, and I'm not sure where it would have gone.
And what's that?
Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games of all time, and it's not on this list because I forgot about it because it came out so long ago. Just quickly, it's a JRPG about time travel where your decisions actually matter, but the game came out before other games where decisions mattered. There's tons of different endings to the game, tons of characters that you learn to love, themes that are just absolutely phenomenal. It's the only game I've ever cried at. Chrono Trigger, so many feelings for that game. But anyway.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's not skip over the fact you didn't cry at Life is Strange.
No, I got very close, specifically with the third and fourth game. Or I think someone between the third and fourth game, I would say I was essentially in tears, but nothing actually came out. My eyes were just watering.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so let's finish this list up.
All right, my number one favorite game of all time, I'm going to cheat a little, is the Mass Effect series. Now, the Mass Effect series is, how do I put it? It is a BioWare RPG series. It's a third-person sci-fi RPG series in which you are a commander who attempts to save the galaxy from an impending threat. The reason that I list all three games is because it's really difficult to put them in their own sort of places. Mass Effect 1 I enjoyed thoroughly because it gave me this awesome feeling of exploration, and you were able to explore these gigantic worlds and these huge structures, and you were just this small, tiny little pawn in everybody's game. It was phenomenal. Mass Effect 2 was a better game. It was objectively a better game. It still had a lot of exploration, but it had better gameplay, it had a fantastic storyline, and everything about it was just absolutely polished. Mass Effect 3 was not as polished in terms of the story perspective, nor the exploration, but the reason I list it is simply because the multiplayer functionality gave me enough joy for about 400 or 500 hours of my life, so it's a little difficult not to list it there. But Mass Effect is just an absolutely phenomenal series. It's easily my favorite series of all time, and it's just absolutely incredible to play. So many feelings for that game as well, and just so much of my life has been dedicated to playing that series and experiencing things with those characters. Yeah,
there's a phenomenal ensemble cast as well because you sort of put together these crews of just extraordinary people. So who would you say is your favorite squad mate?
Your favorite squad mate? Yeah. Oh, that's easy. Garrus Vakarian. Garrus Vakarian is just this incredibly cool character. He's a Turian, which means nothing except that he's strangely bird-like, but he is just absolutely badass. That's the only thing that you really can say about him. When at one point you end up leaving him, or he like disappears or something, he just becomes a bounty hunter. Because he's just that cool. He's essentially a Boba Fett type character. He has this deep, gravelly voice, and he used to be a cop, but he doesn't like them anymore because they always were too confining, trying to keep him to the rules and all those sorts of things.
So then, two other questions. All right, so in terms of canon playthrough, and these kind of go together, femshep or maleshep, and then who's your canon romance?
Femshep all the way, but only really because just she was so much of a better voice actor.
Jennifer Hale, yeah. She does a lot of video games.
She was just better than Mark Meer at voice acting, which made it far more enjoyable to play. And then romance, I romance Liara.
Okay. So we're not going to have very interesting in terms of diversity in our answers to these questions. Because it just so happens my favorite crew member is Garrus. He was my first mate and my buddy to the very end. And femshep, and I romanced Liara.
Oh wow! Well, this is boring.
Yeah.
There are other options, just so you know.
Oh yeah.
Other contenders for coolest crewmate, I would put Thane. It is pretty cool. I would put Rex. Obviously, Rex is this
Rex would probably be my other one. Other
big
than
brutish companion. Again, like just this incredible guy. So yeah, I would put him up there as well.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
And Morden Solis, because he's just cool.
Yeah.
Look him
fair.
up. Look up. I am the very model of a scientist Solarian.
Yeah. You can just guess how that's spelled. So my number one game, also not available on Steam, is a game made by Naughty Dog, the creators of Crash Bandicoot.
What, wasn't there another game series that they made? I forget.
Uncharted, which is
coming out soon. Uncharted 4.
Yes, but still not that. The Last of Us. The Last of Us is my favorite game. And that's interesting for me to say because a lot of games that I've listed here and just a lot of games that I really like in general have a degree of choice, a degree of role-playing. And Last of Us does not have either of those. It's an extremely linear game. But the story that it's able to tell on those rails is one of the most, if not the most, amazing story that I've ever seen told in the medium. And what it's about is you play as a grizzled old man named Joel. It's sort of like a zombie apocalypse equivalent to True Grit, but that doesn't really do it justice because the characters are so complex, and I highly recommend that if you're ever going to play it, you also play the Left Behind DLC, in which you play as the young girl who Joel is trying to protect throughout the game of The Last of Us, because you get more in-depth character details for her through that DLC. But the game, it's got some amazing characters because none of them are perfect. And it's all about the little things. It's not, while I really enjoy Mass Effect, it's not a story on any sort of scale like that. It takes these tropes of zombies and the apocalypse, and like if that scares you away, like that's fine, but it's so much more because it really brings those things and concepts that we've seen so many times in video games. It really brings them down to a human level, and just it tells an absolutely amazing, one of a kind, breathtaking story.
Yeah, and you don't have to take James's word for that. This is what every single person on the planet who has played Last of Us is saying. It's just that incredible of a story. It's more or less a movie type of a thing because it's just so linear and it's such an engaging story. Now, you said it was the best story you've seen in that medium. What stories in other mediums would you consider to be better?
Okay.
That you can think of off the top of your head right now.
Wait. Can you refine the question just to make sure that I'm clear on what you're asking?
Sure. So you said that this was probably the best story you've ever seen sort of in video games, right?
Yes.
What story would you say you've seen or read in a different medium that you would consider to have been better than The Last of Us?
Okay. I guess in television form, I would say Breaking Bad or The Sopranos, and then in movie form, and all of these are at the top of my head and absolutely not premeditated at all. Probably the original trilogy of Star Wars.
Makes sense. Sounds good. Absolutely.
What about you, Matt? I guess as long as we're not talking about video games.
What would I consider is better than The Last of Us' story?
No, just like what are some of the best stories that you've seen told?
Oh, geez. Battlestar Galactica the newer series was a pretty incredible story. What else? In terms of movies, in terms of phenomenal story, I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would beat out Last of Us. It's just, I don't know. That story was just phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because there's absolutely no choice or role playing aspects to it, but because the story is that much more focused and bottlenecked, the developers were really able to make it their own. And what the story that they told is, absolutely breathtaking. In addition to the fact that it's also probably one of the best games that I've ever played in terms of gameplay. It's extremely well balanced. All the mechanics just feel really, really well done, well executed. It's got some of the most grueling and stress-inducing stealth that I've played in a game, and it's just, to me, it's the whole package.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to know, the way that Last of Us is classified is, I believe, a third-person cover-based stealth RPG. I believe is what it's classified as.
Yeah. I wouldn't use the word cover-based. Like, there is cover, but it's not cover-based like Mass Effect 3 is, where there are mechanics to pop in and out of cover. But yeah, that's basically how it plays. So this has been the final episode of the Gaming Society Radio Hour. You will probably be hearing from Matt and I in the fall. We'll see where the summer takes us, but this has been an absolute joy for me, and I can't talk for Matt here, but this has been so much fun to be spending my Sundays here in this booth.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute blast for me. Talking about video games with James is sort of just one of my normal pastimes, so being able to do it on the radio is even better.
And we've learned something about each other, Matt. We now know what each other's top 5 games are.
That's true.
It's something that we haven't explicitly talked about.
We've come very close, though. I was surprised that Mass Effect was nowhere on your list, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I have some good memories there.
Okay, all right.
Maybe I'll talk about that sometime in the next semester. But for the meantime, this has been the Gaming Society Radio Hour. I'm co-host James.
And I'm Matthew.
And this is us signing off.